Welcome back. And, well, one of the subjects that's in the news a lot, judge shopping, courts, the legislature, the Supreme Court, rogue judges. Perfect timing for us to have with us our good friend John O'Connor, former federal prosecutor, experienced trial lawyer, author of a couple of books, Postgate, How Washington Post Betrayed Deep Throat and Covered Up Watergate, and began what we call today's partisan advocacy journalism. No question about that. John has also served as an assistant U.S. attorney in Northern California, representing the United States in both criminal and civil cases. There's a picture of the book, and his website is called postgatebook.com, where you can also pick up the complimentary book with it as well, called The Mysteries of Watergate. Why? Back to Watergate. There's a lot to learn in history, and there it is. Brother John, good to see you, friend. How are you?
Sorry?
Okay. We have the executive branch, we have the legislative branch, and we have the judicial branch. Can one branch tell the other branch what to do?
That's the question the founders posed in putting our system together. And there should be, and they designed it so there's a tension between each branch, and that's the idea, where the democratic process should, as it were, fight this out. But
we get a stall.
The executive has some powers that are not reviewable by a court, and some powers that should not be subject to legislation, did not require legislation. And that's a hard one for people to accept. It's certainly a hard one for the judiciary to accept. But nonetheless, it's there. And the fact is that the courts should not control every aspect of our country's functioning, especially once it gets to the water's edge or to our borders. National security and border control are clearly executive branch functions, and the court should give wide berth and deference to the executive's actions. They don't understand that. I mean, there are judges that grow up in the idea that everything is about printed case law and their ability to pound the gavel and enforce that printed case law. But once we get into this area, this is something that should be primarily controlled by the executive, and the judiciary should step in only in rare circumstances or compelling circumstances. And there has to be a sense of deference there. There's nothing that's hard and fast here in this particular area once you get in there.
Okay, so we have a president in office roughly 100 days, and he's had already 15 injunctions, thrown at him by district court judges. He's slowly winning those, but it's producing a bunch of questions. Are they outside their jurisdiction with these injunctions? And if so, who corrects it, the Supreme Court or the legislature, in defining the role of a district judge?
I think the best source is the Supreme Court. There's a question as to what extent the legislature should be writing down judicial philosophy. It's very hard to do that in a statute. But I think the Supreme Court could give guidance to the courts below, especially in this area of judicial deference. And Judge Roberts just made that comment in the one of the El Salvadorian cases, I think the large deportation, that sort of warning the courts or advising the courts that they should look at these questions with deference to the executive's powers. That's a nice way of saying it. Yes, you can handle this case. Yes, they can sue in your court. But when you start examining the executive's actions, give that executive all due deference. You're not substituting your judgment for that of the executive. And that's a very hard thing to do, especially, Perry, in these last 50 years or so since Watergate. Everyone thinks that, at least so many people think that the way to roll is you always default to sort of what I would say strong powers for the judiciary and strong due process powers, that you have the right as a judiciary to come in and control the executive branch. The courts have gone a bit far here, especially in this nationwide injunction stuff.
Because at the end of the day, John, it appears to me, and I'm a layperson way down the chain on this, but it appears to me that these district courts are overwhelmed with cases. If anything, we probably need more district judges. But when you have a judge goes rogue like this, what does it do to the process?
Well, it's rough because what happens is that first of all, the plaintiff's lawyers are not stupid. They know how to judge shop. You can file a suit, and if you don't like the judge that's selected, if you don't like the initials, you can always just dismiss it and go to another court and file an action and see if you get a good judge. And you can always select the right venue, like Washington, D.C., where most of the judges are very liberal. So that is a very, very concerning thing, Perry. And how you stop that, again, I think the court has to give instructions as to how to prevent the lower courts from issuing nationwide injunctions willy-nilly. You think about it, they're just a little district court someplace with many other judges in their same district, and yet you're really legislating for the whole country. That has to be curtailed significantly.
So how much of a blow, John, were these two cases that the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the president? How much of a blow was it to the lower court?
I think it was done deftly. I think especially the larger El Salvadorian case, in which essentially Roberts suggested that when this matter comes up for hearing, that the courts give due deference to the powers and the opinions of the executive branch. I think it was done in an unembarrassing way. I think it was done very smoothly and without rebuking the lower courts. So I think it was done the right way. But I think the message is starting to get across. I'd like to see a couple more cases like this where these things are fleshed out. But this is an awful good start.
Because to that point, John, two other injunctions now are being filed, one out of Texas, and I forget where the other one is, on the same merits of these that were overruled by the Supreme Court in trying to interrupt the president's deportation. So it doesn't look like it stopped it completely. So maybe you're going to get what you kind of think needs to be done, and that is a couple more cases to be put down by the Supreme Court.
Right. That's right. And so there'll be a lot of action. Let's put it this way. The next year is going to be full of judicial rulings that will shape our future quite a bit. And I couldn't be happier with the court we have now.
The other thing that pops up in this, and I want to be careful here, is immediately when things don't go the way you want them, what do? You say, well, I want to impeach these guys. I want to throw them under the bus, get them out of there. Is that something we really want to pursue?
No. In a word, no. Now, if the courts, let's say over the next year, lay down some fairly good guidelines, and there are judges out there that say, I don't care what the Supreme Court says or what Congress says, because Congress may enact a law here. I don't care what they say. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to be part of the resistance. Now, if you get a rogue judge, yeah, I can see why you might start thinking about impeaching them, but it really bothers me that we would threaten the independence of the judiciary, even if there's a judge that I don't like, or I don't like his thought processes. I don't think impeachment's the remedy. It's called an appeal.
Yeah.
And so that's our system. And I don't think we should be like the other guys who want to just run roughshod over customs and practices. That's something the Democrats do. The conservative, common sense people generally don't like to do that, and I don't think we should start now.
Good. I agree with that. One other quick question along these lines. I'm learning something, and maybe you can clarify it, that there are injunctions that cannot be appealed, the type of the injunction. Can you clarify that?
I'm not sure what's meant by that. I'd like to see
Well, I
chapter
guess
and verse on.
what I'm saying is that apparently there's been some injunctions that went right over into the Supreme Court and didn't get the process where it wasn't allowed to be appealed. They just jumped right into the Supreme Court. So I don't know. I guess my question is, again, I'm not totally out of ignorance here, but I picked it up the other day and trying to process it through my brain. Are there two types of injunctions?
My question is whether there's two types of appeals.
Oh, okay.
And how one gets to the Supreme Court without going to the Court of Appeals. And I think probably, and I haven't, by the way, I've just got it. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah.
I've got the latest decision on my email. I had my associate keep me up on these cases. So I don't know the jurisdiction here as to how they did it, but I do think the Supreme Court does have extraordinary powers to accept a case in extraordinary circumstances. So I think, for instance, let's say there's a serious question about President Trump's powers, and you and the Justice Department think this is so important that the Supreme Court has to weigh in on it.
Well,
Petition the Supreme Court and ask them to take it in extraordinary fashion. I think you can. I think there's probably nothing. Let's put it this way: I think the Supreme Court can do just about anything it wants procedurally when it comes to the judicial area. So I think that's probably what happened. The Supreme Court just said, "Okay, this is important enough. We'll take a look at it."
yeah.
Because there's going to be harm if we don't do it. If we allow this thing to continue to fester until it gets to us in the normal course, there's too much harm that's done. I'm just guessing, Perry, but as to what happened here.
Because basically what you're saying is kind of what happened, because didn't the president requested emergency procedures from the Supreme Court to step in quickly, and they did. So I know one was heading towards the appeal, the other one jumped over appeal, and the court listened to both of them. So that's under the emergency clause, isn't it?
There you are. There you are. That's essentially what I said inarticulately, but I think the Supreme Court has that power for an emergency that on good cause shown, that we're going to step in, because they do have, besides deciding cases, they also are in charge of administering to all these various inferior courts around the country. And this has a couple different issues here. First of all, constitutional issues of the separation of powers is huge here. The second aspect intertwined with that is their administration of the lower courts. So those two things combined here to make it in a true emergency matter. I was thrilled they took it. I just haven't yet paid attention to what was the basis for the Justice Department to say they should take it. But they clearly have that power.
Okay. Sorry about the sidebar.
It's fascinating, Perry.
Yeah.
This is it's a very, very good question, because these are extraordinary times, and I think the Supreme Court, they're looking around the corner here and they're seeing that this is really something they have to come in and straighten out. And I'm so happy they did it.
All right, let me take a quick break. Got a few more questions. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, check out John's website, postgatebook.com, where you can check out both books, Postgate and then also The Mysteries of Watergate. And we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. Always an honor to have with us John O'Connor, former federal prosecutor and very experienced trial lawyer. He's also served as the assistant U.S. attorney there in Northern California. And his website is called postgatebook.com, where you can check out the book Postgate and then the sequel to it, The Mysteries of Watergate. So, John, there is a bill moving through the House yesterday. It's called the SAVE Act. It was pretty interesting. 220 votes for it, 208 against it. So actually some Democrats came across the aisle to vote for this. And basically it is, you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote in a federal election. So it appears this is on the move. Let's just assume for a moment it goes all the way through and becomes law. Would this set up possibly 2 ballots in a state? So during an election where you have state and city and municipal candidates running for something, a non-citizen could vote for those, and then you'd have a ballot for the federal election.
We sort of have this already. Most people don't realize that in the contested election in 2020, Arizona, through lawsuit brought by a special interest group, ended up, Katie Hobbs, who's a Democrat, stipulated to this, which I think is terrible, but stipulated to a judgment that allowed non-citizens to vote in federal-only elections. So the reverse of what you said. But in Arizona right now, and people have tried to get rid of that, but right now, someone can come and get a federal ballot in Arizona, even though they're not a citizen. And the problem in 2020 was about 10,000 people voted under that, and maybe 8 or 9. But in this last election, it got up to 20, where we know at least before the election, 20,000 people had ballots under the federal-only idea. So one assumes that all those people are not citizens, because in that program, you didn't have to show proof of citizenship. Now, think about what that is, Perry. The 2 ballot thing doesn't bother me so much as it bothers me that in any of these cases, non-citizens can vote. That is completely antithetical to the whole idea of a democracy. It's supposed to be only citizens. Even though that may seem exclusive, that's the concept.
Sure.
Those are the demos. The demos are the people, and the people are the citizens. And now we're saying you can vote to control our country, even though you're a citizen of another country. And there is an area, I think it might be in Texas someplace, where they're trying to impose Sharia law on a municipality, and that's the conundrum of our system, that in a democratic process, people can all vote together to put together a government that's completely authoritarian and non-democratic, and completely, in spite of the separation of church and state, have a religion control the political realm.
Yeah.
So that's a very concerning trend. And I don't know. I'm happy that we can have this statute that says that only, at least in let's say at least in federal elections, you got to be a citizen. Now, I don't know what you do at the state level. I suppose there's room for a suit under state law, or perhaps even a constitutional violation.
Well, if this sees the light of day, I mean, it seems to be, to your overall concern, this is a step in the right direction, that in federal level you have to be a citizen to vote. That's going to put the pressure on the state to see if they adhere to that, which I would assume this would hold up in court. But does it create a 2-ballot system in a state that could care less?
Well, I say fine. I'll tell you this: it does encourage them to have the same measure for state state offices, right, because it's so expensive to print up second ballots. So that's a good thing in my view.
Right.
And I think this legislation is a good thing, and we should keep it to citizens. I mean, this is a real testing point for a country that has millions and millions of illegal immigrants here.
Yeah. Okay. Do you suspect, John, from your intel, that as DOJ continues to uncover fat and fraud and deceit, that sooner or later they're going to track the money to kickbacks? And could that lead to unbelievable, maybe legislative crises in the United States where our elected officials are crooks?
I think there are a lot of elected officials who are crooks. And one of the things that they're going to see, and this is where it's going to be hard to prove anything, when you can get $20 billion out the door to Stacey Abrams' NGO,
Right.
and then she can in turn give it to other NGOs, what is the method? I mean, we know that's a kickback. We know that people are getting paid off. We know that one of the NGOs she could give to would be an NGO that's run by the offspring of a congressperson or some other politician. Well, Stacey Abrams herself is a politician that's going to deliver votes. So all of this is very, very troubling, and I think we're going to find that. And now, whether or not these are criminally indictable is another matter, but in essence, they are kickbacks. That's exactly what's going on. In California, this has been terrible for a long time. What happens is all the NGOs, together with the unions, the governmental employees unions, get together. They contribute a ton, both in money and in manpower, for phone banks to get the people elected, and you have to play ball with them. And in turn, the elected officials give money to the NGOs. And you can have a nice NGO and have a $500,000 salary, and the NGO should pay for your car, and they should pay for trips to wonderful resorts, because you need to have these wonderful discussions of how to run your NGO with other NGOs who are doing the same thing. And meanwhile, the person paying for that is the waitress who's busting her back to make money, and then she pays taxes for people like this. It was really bothersome to me, and it's been going on for quite a while. And the master of this was Biden.
All right, so the good news is it's being uncovered, being discovered, and being cut off. That's the good news. I mean, if we stop funding this baloney, that's a huge savings on the expense line. But moreover, it's going to dry some of these crazy things up.
Oh, that's right. That's absolutely right. And this is a little bit off topic, but I will tell you this. How did Anthony Fauci get the gain-of-function research into China? He gave a grant to an NGO, didn't he?
Oh, gosh.
That's how he went around our system, and that's how we had this terrible nationwide pandemic, was because of using these NGOs. So it's a very, very concerning thing for a democracy, because these things can be buried so deeply.
John, one quick question, short amount of time. If they determine that President Biden was incompetent and he was electronically signing things by the decision of somebody else, does that undo any of his decisions?
No, it won't, because first of all, he hasn't been declared incompetent under the 25th Amendment, what have you. So that's number one. And signing with another pen doesn't mean anything as long as it's authorized, and he would say he authorized it, the signing this way of these particular bills.
Yeah.
All it does is point out in a democracy why we shouldn't elect people like Biden, and that's what's tough. You think about that election in 2020, and we were all bamboozled, and you and I knew it, but most people didn't.
Yeah. Thank you, John. You're always there for us. I appreciate it. Your wisdom is greatly appreciated. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, check out John's website, postgatebook.com. A couple of books there of history that you would think they were written yesterday. The Mysteries of Watergate and Postgate itself. Check those out at postgatebook.com. Thank you, John. We have a lot to talk about. It gets interesting by the hour.
We have a year ahead of us, Perry. I'll tell you that.
There we do. Thank you. God bless you, friend.
Yeah.